Well, he would gather the rebel army and slaughter the Imperial fleet. Yes, applauded the Iblistone. Tremendous. Then the Emperor would have to answer his far speaker, wouldn't he? Who are you? Asked a distant voice that sounded uncomfortably like Zenobia. What have you become? The mountains. Go to the mountains, urged another that sounded a bit like Lapino.
Zeit für den Kampf. Reynardo hat sich zu einem fantastischen Krieger entwickelt, dank des Iblissteins. Aber dann hörte er diese fernen Stimmen. Egal. Er hatte eine wichtige Aufgabe zu erledigen. Eine Rebellion anzuführen. Einen Krieg zu gewinnen. Ja, er musste sich sofort zum Rebellenstützpunkt begeben und die Truppen zusammenrufen.
Reynardo called the rebel council to let them know to gather their forces. Then he killed the far speaker toad. Why? Oh, because to make sure his sword was sharp. Oh no, that's awful. So no one else could use it. Yes, that's it. Then he set off for the ruins and the secret rebel base.
Scheiß auf die Kröte. Also sind so wie diese Schnecken in
the ruins
One
were
Piece.
crawling with ravens. Probably looking for the secret base, Reynardo thought. But then he realized they're probably looking for me. They must be very scared of me. Well, here I am.
Rock you like a hurricane.
Whispered the Iblistone. And he had to agree with it, for once. Who was as good as Reynardo? Reynardo was so happy. The stone was the best friend he'd ever had. Really, who would bury such a treasure in the desert? Soon, he'd go rally the rebellion and usher a new age for the islands of Erda. Urged the stone. Let it make you Emperor. Come to think of it, Reynardo thought as he put down another raven, why shouldn't I be Emperor? How did anybody get to be Emperor anyway? By making war. I mean, not counting the transcendent Emperor, obviously, who had banished the lost gods and started time. Yes, he should be Emperor. He would make a great Emperor. Right, Stone? Oh, right, boss.
Also töten wir wieder alle.
Reynardo strode into the council. Let's do this thing. Let's make me Emperor. They looked confused and nervous. Ah. Had he mentioned the Emperor thing? Yeah, he'd meant to bring that up later. I mean, let's go win this rebellion! He waved his sword around encouragingly.
Ups, alle
They
tot.
ran. Cowards. He'd stop them. He cut down a few to inspire the others. But soon, there was no one to cut down. Well then, he'd have to attack the fleet alone. More for me, he said. Unless it was the stone that said it. Traitors. Traitors, all of them. They'd run rather than following him, rather than cheering him. What should he do to the cowards? Anything he wanted to. After all, he was a true hero, the best warrior there ever was. No one could stop him now. But first, finish him. The Emperor, that is.
Ah, diese kleinen Anspielungen. Herrlich.
Where was the rebel fleet? They weren't even trying an assault.
Zeit zu töten.
They were going to miss a day in history. The downfall of this dynasty, and a new one to take its place. He didn't have to kill all the ravens.
Dynasty?
He
Ich
could
dachte, das heißt
enslave them.
Dynasty.
And enslave the toads too. All the animals would worship him as a god, for he had once been a god. He would willingly give them their blood and their souls. And the world would change, would become familiar again.
Ah, töte doch den Imperator. Na dann. Vielleicht kriegen wir doch noch einen Level up.
Already the sun had dimmed. He could do anything, he realized. He could wrap the island safely in smoke again. He was beyond a hero. He was going to become a god again. How odd, he thought, that the Iblis stone had nothing to say about any of this. Well, no matter. Once he killed this petty toad emperor, he would bring back the Black Sun. Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Again. This time, he'd make an end of it. He'd screwed up last time, but he had a good feeling about this time. He found the Emperor and the Council huddling by his ship, plotting. They saw him and cowered before him.
Back to hell, fiend.
Croaked the Emperor desperately.
In the name of the Transcendent Emperor!
Croaked the Speaker. They held some arcane items he didn't recognize. He simply flexed his will and sucked their souls out of their bodies. And Iblis exulted. It is finished. And the void that had been a mere stone on a sword expanded. It stretched and ripped like a vast womb. And a gaze, black and pitiless as the sun, passed through the void into the land. And so time ended.
Oh.
Oh, again? But he already had all the secrets he needed. He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way.
Ein Goldtrophäe bekommen.
What was the best,
Bücherwurm.
worst mistake he could make? Probably trusting that traitor Lapino.
Das Erwachen. Ein Held, der die Macht mit offenen Armen begrüßt, der über das Heldentum hinauswächst, der es wagt, zum Gott zu werden. Sogar ein Level-Up bekommen für. Nice.
The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again.
Beenden wir
Faster
das
than
Spiel.
before? And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble.
Ihr dürft euch
were
auch nochmal die
scouting for the
Scheiße mit mir
secret rebel
anhören. Ich habe
base.
die jetzt oft genug gehört.
They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renata knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had
Ich
risen
bin mir
out of
sicher, ich
empty
kann auch
desert.
auf dem
The
richtigen
Iblis
Weg
stone was
Scheiße
hidden
bauen.
there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty
Entschuldigung,
monster.
ich musste meine Medikamente
Maybe
einnehmen.
he could find a way to use it. To take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course. Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. And he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause. And maybe Renato could use that somehow.
Renato konnte das sicher irgendwie ausnutzen. Was sollte er mit dem Wissen über Lapinos Verrat anfangen? Renato wäre ein Narr, wenn er Lapino wieder vertrauen würde. Er sollte ihn damit konfrontieren. Oder besser noch einen Weg finden, den Verräter gegen seinen neuen Meister, den Imperator, auszuspielen. Vielleicht würde sich Lapino doch noch als Schlüssel zum Sieg erweisen.
Renato couldn't quite put his paw on when he'd realized Lapino was working for the Empire. He'd never exactly seen Lapino sending coded messages to the palace, but he was sure. The rabbit had been on too many disastrous missions where he was the only survivor, or where he accidentally missed getting on the boat that went down to the abyss in flames. If Renato could prevent Lapino from getting back to the fleet with all the intelligence he'd probably gathered, it might be worth the trip.
Na dann.
How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs.
Oh, beste Freunde.
But he'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice?
Ein weiteres Level-Up werden wir nicht mehr bekommen. Was zum Teufel ist
Ravens
da
were landing
passiert?
everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a rabbit. Lapino would betray him. The core was dangerous. Renato had a fleeting idea that the two ideas went together somehow. And then it was gone again. Ah, damn ideas. They never stuck around when you needed them.
Also gut, Lapino.
Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Now that he knew what the rabbit was, there were a few things about him that Renato didn't find so amusing anymore. You sent me an urgent message saying that you're in danger. Oh, I am. The ravens are coming. Now, I've got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky River was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it.
Es gibt mehrere Wege. Okay, ich stelle den Verräter bloß. Renato erkannte, welch schauspielerisches Talent Lapino hatte. Ich werde... Oh Gott, ich dachte, wir beenden das Ganze heute. Ah, doch nicht. Na, welch schauspielerisches Talent Lapino hatte. Kein Wunder, dass er von diesem Verräter zum Narren gehalten worden war. Vielleicht sollte er den Hasen hier und jetzt denunzieren, um dessen Pläne zu durchkreuzen und sich zu rächen. Es ist der falsche Weg, aber ich will sehen, was passiert.
Me? A traitor? I'm hurt, said Lapino. Why ever would you say that? We found your code book, said Renato. They hadn't, but he hoped Lapino would blow his cover. You got me, said Lapino. And you know what? I don't regret a thing. It's always about you, isn't it? You're the pretty hero. You get the girl, you get the medal, and what do I get? Rabbit food. I thought you liked rabbit food. Go to hell, said Lapino. And he made a gesture, and 20 ravens came out of nowhere and stabbed Renato to death. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it.
Zumindest ist es sowas.
How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs. He'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Ooh, was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice?
Ich wollte gerade sagen, ich nehme diesmal aber den Brunnen, dann bin ich schneller bei ihm.
Ravens were landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a rabbit. Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Oh, I am. The ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it.
Schickt den Verräter los, den Kern zu holen. Renato erkannte, welch schauspielerisches Talent Lapino hatte, kein Wunder, bla bla. Vielleicht sollte er diesem selbstgefälligen Verräter den Standpunkt des Skyripper-Kerns verraten und während Lapino die instabile Waffe dem Gegner übergab, würde Renato Zenobia einen Besuch abstatten.
Renato felt like a real hero, brave and smart. He told the rabbit all about the Skyripper's God's Eye core. "I'll go get the core while you attack Zenobia," he told the rabbit. "Oh, wait, I've an even better idea. I'll get the core and you attack Zenobia," said the rabbit. "Right, yeah, that is better," agreed Renato. Perfect. The traitor would make sure the Emperor got the core. Now Renato just needed the Emperor to use the core. If he could only get something that the Emperor wanted very badly. Zenobia. He could save her and bait the Emperor at the same time.
Ich habe das Gefühl, wir werden einige Game-Over-Screens kriegen.
Right.
Und ich
Now,
werde dann
all
einfach
Renato had to do was fight his way through Zenobia's
Kämpfe
invading
überspringen.
troops, sneak onto her ship and into her bedroom and kidnap her without any of her dozens of guards
Wow,
alerting
wow,
her.
wow, wow.
Then he would
Was
rely
war
on her
das
love for
mit
him,
ihren-
convince her how evil her father was, so she'd run away with him instead of going back to her father, who was going to blow himself up.
Den sich in ihren Schlafzimmer schleichen, das
It
ist
sound a little risky, but Renato had a
Ein
feeling
Verbrechen.
it would work out somehow. It always did.
Stalker. Ja, obwohl dieses Level ist ziemlich kurz. Vielleicht kriegen wir ja doch noch ein Level Up durch die ganzen Game Overs. Auf weiter. Dreh dich mal. Wieso sitzt Lapino hier?
Renato was halfway to Zenobia's encampment when Lapino showed up. He was disheveled and distraught. "They jumped us. I barely got away. Oh, they got the core." Oh, it was all going according to plan, thought Renato. Now he just needed Zenobia on his side. Yes, that was even better. The Iblis Stone. Zenobia could get it. And then the Emperor would have to pursue them. Wait. No. The gem would corrupt anyone. Even her. That's it, he thought. Even Lapino. Even though Lapino was already a traitor. It would turn him against his secret master, the Emperor. He would try to make himself Emperor. And the Emperor would have to defend himself with the core.
Kompliziert, aber macht Sinn.
He was a super genius. This is terrible, Renato told the rabbit. If only I had gone for the Iblis Stone. but now it's lost in enemy territory. He handed Lupino a map. It gives the bearer so much power. We can only hope the Emperor never finds it. What was that? Said Lupino. I think someone's following us. I didn't hear anything. Rabbit ears. You go on ahead. I'll check it out. And with that, Lupino hopped off with the map. Look, it's not personal, but your mother wears army boots. On her ears.
Boom.
Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship,
Hypnotisierst
making
du
no
mich jetzt
sound
nicht
at all.
trotzdem?
She was curled up on her bed. He'd forgotten how beautiful she was, how sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She was made of smoke, and he noticed he had a very solid blade to his throat. Did you really think you could capture me? Purred a familiar voice. I just wanted to chat, said Renato. Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? He needs a sacrifice, someone who truly loves him, to make a bargain with the lost gods. That's a vicious lie. He wants to bring them back. That's crazy. Why would anyone... They could make him immortal. An eater of souls. And with that, her eyes widened. She understood. Renato told her how he had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred. How he had slept in a burnt village. At midnight, the Emperor's victims had come to him in his dreams to tell him of the hideous eldritch rituals they'd been sacrificed in. He could still see those kittens and puppies. Their wide, sad eyes, their moist noses. You can't prove that. I've got a witness at the observatory.
Okay, dann muss ich noch einmal Zenobia dahin schicken, um zu sehen, was da passiert für ein Game Over Screen.
He couldn't tell her, not yet, why he was really here. He didn't want her to be anywhere near the fleet when her father blew himself and Lupino up. So he told her about how the Emperor's obscene rituals had raised ancient artifacts out of the land. How he'd followed the appalling trail of the hideous horrors His Majesty had perpetrated for the sake of his own immortality. Any of this ring a bell? He said. He told me it was all lies. You've always known when I was lying. I always hated that about you, said Renato. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic?
Das
Why?
habe ich schon mal gehört.
Would you join in? No. I'd destroy his books and I'd... Oh, God. Okay, you're not completely wrong. They've resurrected one of his victims. Well, look, I mean, look, it's not exactly alive, but it can talk. A true witness, she said.
Habt ihr das auch so, wenn ihr Spiele spielt? Auch wenn euch nur 5 HP fehlen und ihr könnt sie mit nicht wirklich viel Mühe heilen? Macht ihr es? Ich weiß nicht. Der Lebensbalken muss immer voll sein. Es stört mich aber, dass mein Magiebalken nicht ganz voll ist. Ah, Arschloch. Big Fat Erfahrungspunkte. Oh, dieser Ort ist langweilig, wenn ich Lapino nicht erstechen darf. Es hat zweimal Spaß gemacht heute. Oh, und alles ist abgebrannt. Das kann nicht das gute Ende sein, wenn die ganzen Forscherkröten sterben.
The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken special care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared at the carnage. He didn't want me to hear the witness, did he? I guess not. What's your plan? She asked. So, Renato explained his brilliant gambit. Sending Lapino to get the Iblis Stone, become super powerful and corrupted, provoke the Emperor into using the core against him, thus blowing up both of them, and hopefully the fleet too. Let me visit your council, she said, shaken. I want to help. Could he really trust her?
Ah, großer Gott. Selbst wenn ich Lapino nochmal hinschicke, habe ich hier einen anderen Weg. Ah, das ist so derbst bescheuert. Ja, ich vertraue dir. Renatos Plan hatte funktioniert. Er hatte Zenobia davon überzeugen können, dass ihr Vater verrückt geworden war und aufgehalten werden musste. Aber es schien zu leicht gegangen zu sein. Hatte er sie wirklich überzeugt, oder spielte sie nur mit ihm? Doch weshalb sollte er jetzt zögern? Er musste ihr den genauen Standort des Stützpunkts verraten und sie dort treffen.
He'd done it. He'd made Zenobia see how evil her father really was. He wished she didn't feel this urge to join in the rebellion. After all, he'd taken care of the Emperor, right? Yeah, but she'd always been conscientious like that. She told him she had to go somewhere first. So Renato gave her the location of the secret base and they agreed to meet in the
Sie holt
ruins.
sich den
He had
Iblisstein,
a
oder?
very good feeling about this. What had
Scheiße.
Zenobia gone off to do? What was more important than meeting the rebel council? Had he made a mistake, sending her to the ruins? No. He knew they could trust each other. He could trust her because she never broke her word. And she could trust him because she could see right through him. Well, she'd probably be there well before him. She at least didn't have to fight her way through rainstorms of ravens.
Ich habe echt keine Ahnung, ob ich gerade den richtigen Weg wähle. Erreiche die Rebellenbasis vor Zenobia. Wir werden es sehen.